You would be right if you were slightly hesitant about spending your hard-earned cash on the brand new Logitech MX Master 4 because the Logitech MX Master range has historically been, for better words, shit. I even made an episode on how bad the MX Master series actually was, but the things that annoyed me the most is that every single content creator and tech YouTuber just absolutely gushes over these things, despite the fact that they had some of the worst and most unreliable connectivity I've ever used in a wireless product ever. If you're one of those flat earther tinfoil hat wearers that deny anything that hasn't happened to you and think that I'm talking rubbish, you only have to do a quick Google and check the forums to find people have had issue after issue after issue. Even the YouTube poster child MKBHD uttered under his breath about the poor connectivity during his otherwise gushing commentary of the MX Master mice. Now, admittedly, many of these connectivity issues seem to relate to Mac users, and that's possibly something to do with how the Bluetooth chips are shielded by a ton of aluminium. So naturally, people would be turned to using the USB receiver module, which was no better. I have had, for the past several years, the mouse on my desk less than a foot away to the receiver, also on my desk, and the connection would still stutter and lag if you placed so much as a 10p piece in between the two. And the most infuriating thing in the world about the entire problem is that you can't use any of them wired. Not a single one can actually connect via the USB cable, which meant that you had literally no other option to connect your devices except through the wireless janky module or the Bluetooth. So imagine the look on my face when Logitech announced the new MX Master 4 with no wired connectivity. Literally, this was the only thing that I wanted from an MX Master 4, and I thought that maybe by making a video called Don't Buy the MX Master Mice, centered around how bad the connectivity was, a video which gained over 100,000 views might just have made them think to include wired functionality in a next-gen product. But of course not. That apparently is something that either A, they can't figure out because they've employed a bunch of mentally unstable orangutan in their engineering department. B, for some reason the complaints are so far off Logitech's radar, despite literally thousands of people whinging about this on social media. Or C, they know that people want it, but have given us the royal finger and told us peasants that we must be happy with bread and circuses and to stop wanting more. So we are back here with the MX Master 4 with tons of new refinements and features, but does any of that really matter if I can't bloody connect properly to any of my devices? Well, as annoyed as I am about the lack of wired connectivity, it would appear, at least on the surface, at least after initial testing, and I'm probably jinxing it here terribly, but so far it seems that Logitech might have ironed out the wireless connectivity problems. Supposedly, according to their website, it's got 2 times the connectivity performance than the MX Master 3S with an updated radio chip, redesigned placement of the antenna, and a brand new USB-C dongle. And I absolutely hate and love, but mostly hate, the fact that it seems to have worked. I've been trying relentlessly to put it through as many tests as possible to replicate the awful lag and connection stutter that plagued all of the old mice, but so far I have not been able to replicate it. I've tried using with tons of stuff in between this and the receiver, cables, phones, all connected to Wi-Fi, even other mice. Stuff that would have made the old ones literally have a meltdown. But the connectivity on the 4 seems constant, consistent and solid when using it with that USB-C receiver. I'll need to spend some additional time here with it, but so far, so good. If you have a Mac and you're finding you've got the same issues that I've had with any of the previous generations of the MX Master range, then this new one with better connectivity is enough reason to upgrade on its own. But that isn't the only reason you might want to upgrade. From a design perspective, it's very much an MX Master, but they've made some very nice refinements to the materials. The 3 was very, very susceptible to wear and tear over time, and the rubberized shell quickly gets horrendously grubby, especially if you have a white one. It almost feels a bit tacky at times. Well, the 4 has done away with this, and now the body is a unibody piece of plastic which should wear better with a lot easier to clean surface, which is a big positive. The plastic as well is quite nice, and it's got this kind of semi-transparency to it, which doesn't really add anything to the usability, but it looks subtle and sleek, and it does have a very slight texture on it too to increase the grip, which I guess is needed without the rubber. The thumb pad now is the only rubberized element with a new ripple texture on it. And the top wheel and thumb wheels seem very similar, and the overall ergonomics have largely stayed the same, but the only real notable change is around that thumb wheel, which I use for scrolling my timelines in Final Cut whilst editing. This is now sat on a convex ridge rather than a concave one. What I think this translates to is less contact with the wheel, because your thumb sort of rests on the little knobbing behind it a little bit too much, so it makes using the wheel a little bit more cumbersome. Of course, ergonomics are very subjective. I mean, I still love the ergonomics of the original MX Master 1 more than anything that's come since, and that was smaller with a lower profile than the newer models. But point being is that although I think this change is a net negative, you might end up preferring the convex ridge for the thumb wheel. Let me know in the comments. Horses for courses as such. But one thing that you can't tell by looking at it that's changed is the clicks. Logitech have reduced the click noise by 90%, and it makes a massive difference. You can't even really hear me clicking now. It doesn't feel quite as sharp to press as a button. It feels a little bit more spongy, which some people would love. I actually really like the change, and I think it's a noticeable difference in the audible click noise for sure. But with the other hardware choices, there's a fair bit that Logitech have also kept the same. On the underside, you still have a selector to pair with 3 different devices, with the on-off button as well, and of course the sensor. The sensor remains very similar to the 3S in that much of the disappointment of gamers, there's still only 125 Hz polling rate. This means that the mouse will only send a single 125 times per second to the computer that you're using it on. Compare that to dedicated gaming mice, which often have over 1,000 Hz polling rates as standard. This is clearly not going to be a mouse that you'll be using much for gaming. It does, however, have 8000 DPI, which is the same as the 3S, which does help with its accuracy, but still, you're unlikely to pick this as a gaming mouse. Creativity, on the other hand, it's a really solid device. The new hardware they've added for that is actually very helpful. And the cream of the crop is the new haptic feedback for the action wheel control button. Now, this button is hidden under the rubberized panel on the side, which opens up the action wheel when you click it, and you can fully customize this wheel within the Logitech app. And when you use any of this, you get the haptic feedback directly to the mouse, giving you a tactile experience with the virtual buttons. It's very Apple, and I have to say that I really do actually like this quite a bit. For those who haven't used the action wheel before, you can customize the wheel's options to automatically change depending on the app that you're using, which is a real nifty feature and can save a ton of time by giving you hot actions without having to remove your hand from the mouse, especially in more complex software like I use, things like Photoshop and Final Cut. Now, Ugreen have sponsored this episode, so to show off some of these shortcuts made possible by the action wheel and haptic feedback, I'll use a few clips of Ugreen's new MagFlow series for an example. Now, you can see this particular clip of the new Qi 2 25-watt wireless magnetic charger is a little bit dark, so by clicking the side wheel button, it opens up the wheel, and I can then hover over the adjustments that I've already set in there, and when doing that, it gives me the haptic feedback. I can bring up the brightness and saturation and contrast adjustment by further clicking on those and moving the mouse left or right to increase or decrease that adjustment. So now I can correct the clip and bring out the details of the Ugreen MagFlow power bank that you might not have noticed, such as the inbuilt strap that actually doubles up as a USB-C cable to charge non-wireless devices, or even charge the battery itself to steal some power from any USB-C outlets you might find lying around. Now, once I've made the adjustment to that clip, I can open up the action wheel again to copy those adjustments and then paste them directly into another clip. This time, a clip of the new MagFlow 2-in-1 charger, which is also Qi 2 for faster wireless charging, and it will charge both your phone and AirPods in a neat folding package. Now, as a side note, those devices, although this episode is sponsored by Ugreen, in my personal opinion, they are actually incredible. The MagFlow battery especially, because I used that during our recent trip to IFA, because it's the world's first 25-watt Qi 2 magnetic power bank to go on sale, making it ideal for quick wire-free charging. If you're running low on battery, you can just whip it out, slap it on the back of your phone, and it can charge your device by 50% in about 30 minutes, which is super fast for wireless charging, and it's super convenient. So if you do want to take a look at any of Ugreen's new MagFlow range, I'll link them in the description below for you. They're absolutely worth a look, especially considering the 34% discount they are offering during their autumn sale from the 7th to the 8th of October. So do take a look at that link. But back to the mouse. This action wheel paired with the haptics is actually very good. And if you've never used it before, you are in for a treat. No longer do you have to mess about moving your hands to the keyboard to press multiple key combinations like you're Beethoven playing some kind of piano symphony just to open up the blade tool in whatever software you're using. But it's not all sugar and roses, however. I do find that occasionally I activate the haptic button when simply gripping the mouse to move it, which is a little bit of an annoyance, but thankfully you can adjust the firmness of the press in the settings. At the moment, I've been using it on medium, but you can increase this by another 2 levels out of the available 4 options. Now, another button that uses the haptics is the new gesture button that's placed in front of the directional navigation buttons that we had on the previous models. Holding this button down and doing a gesture such as sliding up, down, left or right will perform some system tasks such as switching desktops or opening up mission control or expose by default. Of course, there's a massive amount of customization that you can do for this, as well as things like zooming and panning and pretty much anything else you can think of. But when using these gestures, the mouse will also give you that haptic feedback. So for example, when switching desktops, it will give you a little tap on the mouse on your hand as you do it, which is very nice and very tactile. Together with the action wheel, I think the addition of the haptics actually benefit the whole user experience, not just of the mouse, but of the computer. But not so much that it's changed the experience of using an MX Master mouse. It's still recognizable as an MX Master mouse, both by appearance and by use. It's still got everything you might love about the MX Master range, such as the mag speed wheel that can either be tactile or smooth, or even adapt to how fast you end up rolling it. It's also got the signature thumb wheel as well, which I absolutely need as a must, and the customizable buttons and the great ergonomics. But the thing that's changed the game is the fact that it actually works this time. So should you buy the MX Master 4? Well, on a personal level, I'm still seething over the lack of a wired connection. So does Logitech actually deserve my hard-earned pictures of the king? No, absolutely not. But putting away my anger and giving Logitech some credit where credit's due, they seem to have ironed out most, if not all, of the connectivity issues, which I begrudgingly have to say has made the MX Master mouse great again. Now, my previous thoughts on the MX Master series were that you should consider buying one, even with shocking stability, and only because there was nothing else that markedly came close on a combination of the ergonomics and functionality. But I will now change that statement to get it because it's actually good. So should you buy an MX Master 4? Yes. It's the only MX Master that you should buy. Literally forget the other 5 iterations exist.